Welcome back to Learn with Chris. I'm Chris. I believe this is going to be a long video, so let's jump in. Today I want to talk about Odin. So the idea here is that I have a background in Dungeons and Dragons, and in that role-playing game, when they talk about religion, gods have what they call domains, or maybe focuses or portfolios. So this god is the god of these different aspects, right? So a god might be the god of war, or he might be the god of love, or the god of poverty, or the god of wealth, or the god of murder, or the god of the sun, whatever. We call these domains. And it's the same for all religions. I mean, of course, Christianity, the God of Christianity would say he's the God of everything. But polytheistic religions would have pantheons of gods, and every god would have a certain area that they would focus on. Like, for example, the Greeks, Ares was the god of war, specifically, right? And Aphrodite was the goddess of love, specifically. That was her domain. That's what she focused on. The same can be said for the Norse gods. Frigg, Odin's wife, she would be the god of love, and the god of the home, and the god of the hearth, and the god of childbirth. Thor, of course, was the god of lightning and also war. Odin primarily would be the god of poetry, death, and knowledge, magic, wisdom, if you could combine those together. I would say three main domains for Odin: the god of poetry, the god of death, and the god of knowledge. I'm going to make a deep dive video in all three of these aspects of Odin. Today, this video is going to be Odin as god of death. And I'm going to jump into a lot of different sources from the Poetic Edda and from the Prose Edda to talk about this and to give examples. So let's talk about Odin as the god of death. Primarily, one of his names, Odin has a lot of names, and a lot of the names of Odin pop up in a lot of the different stories. Gylfaginning from the Prose Edda, Grímnismál from the Poetic Edda. They generally have a big list of names that refer, that Odin is called by. A very common name for Odin is Valfather, or maybe in English it might be pronounced Valfather, V-A-L. But let's look at this word Val, V-A-L, or Vol, if it would be. I think that's the more close real pronunciation from Old Norse, Volfather. Vol, V-O-L, V-A-L, if it's written in English. Yeah, I think it's the same the same spelling in Norse, actually, would be V-A-L. There's going to be a couple other words that you might be familiar with, which also has V-A-L. Valhalla, or Volhol, again, V-A-L. Valkyrie, the Valkyries, also V-A-L. And a very popular game, Valheim, or probably correctly pronounced Volheim. And of course, Valfather, so V-A-L. So V-A-L obviously is a word with a very specific meaning related to all of these things. So what Val means is slain, as in died in battle. If you're in a fight and you are killed, you are slain. It's like the past participle of to slay someone, S-L-A-Y, slay, to kill. You are slain. So Valfather is the father of the slain. Valhalla, or Valhall, is the hall of the slain. Valkyrie, Kyrie means to choose. So the Valkyrie are the choosers of the slain. And the very popular survival game that I like quite a lot, Valheim. Heim, of course, means home. You remember like Jotunheim or Vanaheim, Muspelheim. Heim means land or home or realm. So Valheim is the realm of the slain, or the home of the slain, which is exactly what the game is about as a survival game. So Odin is the father of the slain, the father of those who have died in battle. So that's a primary characteristic of Odin. And this gets to Fenrir, of course. So why is Odin sending his Valkyries, the choosers of the slain, to collect dead people, dead warriors, and to bring them to Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain, where they will train and where they will eventually fight Ragnarok against let's call it the army of the wolf. It often says to fight the wolf being not just Fenrir specifically, but the Jotnar led by Loki and Surt. So these slain warriors who train in Valhalla to prepare for Ragnarok, they're called Einherjar. You could call them champions. Some translations we'll look at today call them champions. So they are Odin's champions, and they will fight for him. But the Norse word is Einherjar. Ein, of course, means one, and Herjar means like warrior. So it's like one warrior who stands alone, warrior who fights alone. Something like that, but it's a bit confusing because they're not alone, because there's a lot of them. There's hundreds of thousands of them. We'll get to the exact number when we look at some quotes. They'll tell us exactly how many Einherjar there are, and there's a lot. This crosses over into Odin as god of wisdom and knowledge. It's also going to be related to that. There's going to be crossover between Odin as a god of wisdom or knowledge and Odin as a god of death. There's going to be a crossover between the two, but I'm not going to focus on the wisdom stuff today. That'll be a different video. Okay, so let's start looking at some examples of Valfather, the father of the slain, from the Eddas. So we're going to look at some of the poems from the Poetic Edda. We're also going to look at Gylfaginning from the Prose Edda. I'm going to put up the English. I'm going to read it. I'm going to put up the Norse. I probably won't read any of the Norse. I might read a little bit of it just for fun, because it's really hard to pronounce, and maybe I'll try for a little bit, because it's going to be a bit embarrassing to read the Old Norse, because I know I'll be making mistakes. But maybe, we'll see. Okay, so the first thing I'm putting up here is from the poem Grímnismál from the Poetic Edda, and this is going to be stanza 48, and here's a list of some of Odin's names. So you can see over here on the left, Sinhot, Sithskeg, Sigfather, how do I say that? Hnikuth, Allfather, Valfather, Atrith, Farmatir. A single name have I never had, since first among men I feared. So a couple interesting names here: Sigfather, Allfather, and Valfather, and you can see them over in the on the right with the Old Norse. So Sigfather is interesting because if you've been listening to me reading the saga of the Volsungs, there's a lot of Sig names: Sigmund, Sigurth, Signy. So there's a lot of Sig names. A lot of the characters begin with the name Sig. Sig means victory in Norse. So the father of victory, which, maybe kind of says a little bit, maybe there's another domain of Odin, the god of war, perhaps. Victory, right? Allfather, of course, is pretty clear, as Odin considered to be the chief among the Aesir gods. He is the father of all, so Allfather, and of course Valfather as the father of the slain. And if we look at, oh, by the way, I'm getting these pictures from a website called Voluspa.org. Okay, just to give credit to where I'm getting all of this, all of these translations, English and Old Norse. Voluspa.org. I'll put that up on the screen as well. So if we look down here, we can see some of the translations of the meanings of these names. So Sidhoth with broad hat, Sith Skeg, long bearded. So Odin has a long beard. He wears a big hat. Sigfather, as I mentioned, father of victory. Hinithkuth, overthrower. Not really sure what that means. Valfather, father of the slain, the rider, helper of cargoes, i.e., god of sailors. So lots of different focuses about that. Okay, moving on to our next example. This is going to be from Voluspa, stanza 1. So right at the beginning of the very first poem from the Poetic Edda. Hearing I ask from the holy races, from Heimdall's sons both high and low, thou wilt, Valfather, that well I relate old tales I remember of men long ago. So I need to talk about who is talking here. So with the Voluspa, this is a prophecy. So what Voluspa means, it's the prophecy of the Cirrus, the Volva. The Volva was raised out of death by Odin. So I'm gonna demonstrate that in a minute when we look at Voluspa 66. So the idea was that when a Cirrus, a person who could tell, who had some magic and could tell the future, when they died, of course they would go down to hell, and they would have access to lots of more knowledge. So Odin quite specifically raised this Cirrus from the dead using necromancy, again another aspect of a god of the dead, or the god of death, because they would have command over the dead, as in to raise them and to question them, interrogate them, ask them questions, which is exactly what Voluspa is. It's the Volva telling a history. The first part of the Voluspa is a history, kind of like an origins or creation myth. So it's like a creation myth for the Norse. And then the latter half, the end half of the Voluspa, is revelation. It's the end. It's the Armageddon. It's the end of the world. It's the apocalypse, which of course we call Ragnarok, which is this picture here. So, and she calls him Valfather, right? Now, some translations would just say Odin. Thou wilt Odin, that well I relate old tales I remember of men long ago. They would just say Odin, but the Old Norse, as you can see clearly, says Valfather, father of the slain. So let's have a look at 66. So Voluspa 66. From below the dragon dark comes forth Nidhogg flying from Nithafjol. The bodies of men on his wings he bears, the serpent bright, but now I must sink. So it's the last part we're looking at here. Of course, I mentioned this before with Nidhogg, the dragon under Yggdrasil, eating at the roots of Yggdrasil. The dragon, the evil dragon, will survive Ragnarok, survive the end of the world, and it will go into the world, because we mentioned that everything is cyclical. So evil continues into the next realm, the new world and everything. But that's not what I want to focus on here. I want to focus on the very last part. But now I must sink. This is the Volva. Basically, she has been raised from death by Odin to tell her prophecy, to tell the history of the creation as well as the end. And once her job is done, once she has told her prophecy and her story, she sinks back into the earth. So she returns to being dead again, right? So the magic that Odin, you know, the necromancy Odin used to get her out of the ground to tell her story, it's over. So she sinks back into the ground, returns to the after world, returns to hell, right? So that's an example of that there. So, all right, let's do more. We're going to look at, what's the next one? Gylfaginning, chapter 15. So Gylfaginning is from the Prose Edda, written by Snorri Sturluson. And it says here, all know I, Odin, where the eye thou hiddest in the wide renowned well of Mimir. Mimir drinks mead every morning from Volfather's wage. Wit ye yet, or what? So, and also it says above it, so says Voluspa. This is Snorri Sturluson effectively paraphrasing directly or copying directly from the Voluspa. And I believe this is going to be Voluspa 27, I think. But so the eye, again, we have another example of the name Volfather. And Volfather's wage, again, this is going to be another crossover. It's going to be another crossover with Odin as a god of knowledge. So the wage, of course, was his sacrifice of his eye to drink from the well of Mimir to gain wisdom. But again, I'm going to leave that alone until we do another video about Odin as the god of wisdom. But I'm just giving examples of Volfather, father of the slain, as a name for Odin. Now, have a look at the Norse, Alt Vit Ek Odin. At this point, I want to introduce a little bit of music. Surprise. If you're at all interested in Norse mythology, the old gods, paganism, then perhaps you might also be interested in some Norse music. And there's a band called Wardruna, and they make really, really good music that I love, and it's such a strong connection. They are from Norway. They're like modern day Vikings, singing about their ancestors, singing about their old gods. It's like a resurgence of their ancient religion. And so this part here, where all know I, Odin, where the eye thou hiddest. In one of their songs, they have this directly, but it's in Norwegian. But we can see from the Norwegian that the Old Norse and the Norwegian are very close, obviously, because that's where Norwegian comes from. But I do want to just put up a couple of pictures here and just play a couple of seconds of this song. This song is from Wardruna, and the song is called Helvegen. Hell. Vegan is the way or the road or the path. So the path to hell. So this band, modern day Viking, Norwegian musicians, making a song about death. That in itself, and they reference Odin multiple times in this song. Again, connecting to what I'm saying, is Odin as the god of death. So if modern Norwegian Vikings who are making songs about Odin, and their songs are, I mean, this is a dark song, it's about death. So they know that connection as well, right? So a couple of seconds, just have a listen to this. So, so from the pictures I'll put up here, so you can see that the Norwegian and the Old Norse are quite similar, and he's drawing directly from Gylfaginning for the song, which I think is really cool. Okay, continuing on. Now we're going to look at Gylfaginning again. There's going to be a lot of stuff taken from Gylfaginning story in the Prose Edda. This is from Gylfaginning chapter 20, more about Odin's names. Odin is called All-Father because he is the father of all the gods. He is also called the father of the slain because of those that fall in battle are the sons of his adopt-on. For them he appoints Valhalla and Vingolf, and they are then called champions. He's also called the god of the hanged, god of gods, god of cargoes, and he's also been named in many more ways after he had come to King, however you say that name. So again, we got Valfather, father is slain. Let me find the Norse here. Right, so when he says champions, when it reads English, they are called champions. If you look at the Old Norse, you could see Einherjar, that Einherjar for that. So he adopts the sons of his adopt-on, for he appoints them, and they're called champions. So he adopts the slain in battle, brings them to Valhalla. So those are the champions of Odin, who, of course, will fight against the giants in Ragnarok. God of the hanged as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Yggdrasil later from Havamal. But I think this is not, even though hanged, you're dead, but I think this is more related to Odin as a god of knowledge. Because why did he hang himself from Yggdrasil? It was about knowledge. It was about gaining the knowledge of the runes. So that's a knowledge focus, not a death focus. So, but I do want to have a look at what does it say in Old Norse. Okay, it looks like hang, hangaguth. So it's almost the same as in English. It's interesting. Sometimes when you look at Old Norse words, they're going to be extremely close to the English. Very often or not. Very often they're very different, no connection at all. But sometimes you could see the English word in the Old Norse, which is always nice. It's always nice to see that. Speak something about English as a language, right? Okay, moving on. So now we're on back to Voluspa. Stanza 27, which again we see Valfather again. I know of the horn of Heimdall hidden under the high-reaching holy tree. On it there pours from Valfather's pledge a mighty stream. Would you know yet more? So, again, the name Valfather, and again his pledge. So the pledge of Valfather, again, that's the sacrifice of Odin, his eye, to learn the knowledge of the runes. But here they talk about the horn of Heimdall. Hjof, I think is the Norse word. Yeah, and that means something like sound, and it gets translated into lots of different ways. Like in Jackson Crawford's translation, he translates it as ear, which I can show you. Yeah, so his translation for stanza 27 says, I know where Heimdall hid his ear, under the whole heaven-bright holy branches of Yggdrasil. I see a river that feeds the muddy waterfall where Odin's eye hides. Have you learned enough yet, All-Father? So Jackson Crawford translates, for example, Valfather, he translated it as Odin. He just says Odin. And Odin's pledge, he says Odin's eye, because that's what it is, right? But he's translating the Hjof word as ear instead of horn. right? Because it means sound, right? So a horn makes a sound and your ear hears things. So again, it's really hard to pin down the meanings of these things because different translations are going to say different things. But of course, the horn of Heimdall, that's the horn that he blows at the beginning of Ragnarok to alert all of the Aesir and the Vanir that the final battle has begun. Now, it's interesting to me that the horn is hidden. Hidden in the same place that Odin hid his eye, or put his eye. He put his eye in the well of Mimir, which is under Yggdrasil. Mimir's Brunner, or Brunner, Mimir's well. So I'm not sure why. I don't know if anybody watching the video maybe have a better idea, or why would Heimdall hide his horn, Yaller horn, right? That's the horn he blows. Why would he hide it? Why wouldn't it be around his neck at all times? Because you don't know when Ragnarok is when it's gonna begin. Once it begins, he's ready to blow the horn to alert the gods. The final battle is coming. But so when Fenrir breaks free and Ragnarok is beginning, Heimdallr has to go down and get his horn and then blow it. It would be better if he just had it on hand, around his neck. So I'm not really sure why it's hidden. That's an open question. I don't really know. And also from Jackson Crawford's translation, as his ear is hidden. So I don't know what that is either. Like, why, again, did Heimdall take off his ear, cut off his ear, and then hide it under Yggdrasil? Maybe because Heimdall is because he's a watchman, right? He's Bifrost. He's the watchman of the gods. He's, of course, protecting Asgard from any attacks from the Jotnar. But he's also watching, right? He's looking and he's listening, and supposedly he could see, many, many, many miles, and he can hear everything. So perhaps his ear is under Yggdrasil, and he's just listening to all the realms to hear what's going on. Maybe his ear is there as like a surveillance device or something. I don't know. Lots of open questions. Okay, let me move on. Okay, now we're moving on to Gylfaginning 36, which is about the Valkyries. So here we say, these are called Valkyries. Them Odin sends to every battle. They determine men's fairness and award victory. Guthur and Rota, and the youngest Norn, she who is called Skuld, ride ever to take the slain and decide fights. Yorth, the mother of Thor, and Rindr, Vali's mother, are reckoned among the Asinjur. So this is interesting. There's a Norn, Skuld, which is one of the Norns. She's among the Valkyrie. I think this is the whole deciding part here. Of course, the Norns they decide fate. This is a bit new to me. I knew that the Valkyrie were the choosers of the slain, right? They would watch the battle, and presumably they would look at the good warriors, the strong warriors, and they would determine, okay, he was a good fighter, he died in the fight, but he would be an excellent champion for Odin, right? He would be an excellent Einherjar. So we're going to choose him. We're going to take his soul to Valhalla to become Einherjar. But here it kind of implies they decide the fight. They actually determine who dies and who doesn't, or they determine the outcome of the fight. That I'm unfamiliar with. I never saw that before. I thought they just chose the slain. I didn't know that they chose the outcome of the battle. So this is kind of new to me. But given as Skuld is there as a Norn, that kind of does make sense, because that's what Norns do. They do decide fate. And the last part there, reckon among the Asinjur, or maybe Os. Yeah, I think the pronunciation might be Os, Asinjur. The Os are the Aesir gods, right? So the Aesir are the female Aesir gods. So obviously Valkyries are female. But Yorth and Rindr. Now I don't know who Rindr is and Vali's mother, but obviously I know Thor, of course. And as I probably mentioned before, Thor, Odin's son, right? But his mother was a giant. So Yorth was reckoned among the female Aesir. And that's kind of how it worked, right? So if a Vanir goddess married an Aesir god, she would now be considered an Aesir goddess, right? And if a giant, a Jotnar, female giant, married a Aesir, not even married, Yorth is not married to Odin. Odin's wife is Frigg. But Yorth, because she's the mother of Thor, she's reckoned among the Aesir goddesses. It's interesting. It's interesting. So how do you get into that family, right? Or how do you join that tribe, right? Something like that. So the Aesir are the female Aesir. I'm not entirely sure what the male Aesir name is, but anyway, moving on. Okay, so the next couple of parts is going to be 38 and 39 from Gylfaginning, and this is going to be about the Einherjar. Chapter 38 of the food of the Einherjar and Odin. Then said Gangleri, thou sayest that all those men who have fallen in battle from the beginning of the world are now come to Odin in Valhalla. What has he to give them for food? I should think that a very great host must be there. Then Har answered, that which thou sayest is true, a very mighty multitude is there, but many more shall be, notwithstanding which it will seem all too small in the time when the wolf shall come. But never is so vast a multitude in Valhalla that the flesh of that boar shall fail, which is called Sahrimnir. He is boiled every day and is at whole in the evening. Okay, so so this is how they feed the Einherjar. They have a magic pig, a magic boar that they kill every day, and it comes back again the next day, and they just kill it again and eat it again. It's kind of a everlasting pork, something like that. So those fallen in battle from the beginning of the world are now come to Odin and Valhalla. So they are the Einherjar. They are the champions. They are the slain warriors serving the god of death, Odin, to fight at Ragnarok. This is going to again get tied into Odin as the god of knowledge. I have a particular idea about why he is so obsessed with knowledge, but that's another video, the next video. Notice here that it says a very mighty multitude is there. So there's a lot of Einherjar, many hundreds of thousands, a lot, and we'll get to that later. But many more shall be, notwithstanding which it will seem all too small in the time when the wolf shall come. So when the wolf shall come, that is Ragnarok, and that's the final battle. And despite all of the hundreds of thousands of Einherjar, the best of human warriors, the best Viking warriors, it's still going to be too small. It's going to be not enough, basically, right? So that's, again, we'll get into this when we talk about Odin as the god of knowledge. Now, Gylfaginning chapter 39, talking about drink for the Einherjar. Then said Gangleri, what have the champions to drink that may suffice them as abundantly as the food? Or is water drunk there? Then Har said, now thou askest strangely, as if Allfather would invite him kings or earls, jarls, or other men of might, and would give them water to drink. I know by my faith that many a man comes to Valhalla who would think he has brought his drink of water dearly. If there were not better cheer to be had there, he who before had suffered wounds and burning pain until death. I can tell thee a different tale of this. The she-goat, she who is called sometimes it's easier to look at the Norse. Hythrun, I think. She who's called Hythrun stands up in Valhalla and bites the needles from the limb of that tree, which is very famous and is called Leiradrir. I'm assuming that they're meaning Yggdrasil. So the goat is biting at the needles from Yggdrasil. Well, maybe not actually. I don't think Yggdrasil has needles. Maybe not. Okay, and from her udders mead runs so copiously that she fills a ton every day. That ton is so great that all the champions become quite drunk from it. Okay, so you have a goat who's eating away at needles from a tree. Probably not. Even though it's a famous tree, I would think Yggdrasil. But it says needles here, and Yggdrasil doesn't have needles. It's an oak tree, so it can't be that. But anyway, the goat, the goat produces mead, and that's quite a lot for the hundreds of thousands of Einherjar to get drunk from. And if you look at the Norse, the Old Norse, at the very end there, at aller Einherjar verða full drunknir of. So full drunknir. So again, fully drunk, completely drunk. So again, very similar to the English. I find that quite interesting. Okay, the last part is, I mentioned about the multitudes of Einherjar. So here it actually tells us exactly how many. 500 doors and 40 more. So I deem stand in Valhalla. 800 champions go out at each door when they fare to fight with the wolf. So if you break out a calculator and you multiply 540, so it's 500 doors and 40 more, so 540, multiply that by 800, you're going to get a number 432,000. So almost 500,000. So that's how many Einherjar are in Valhalla, training every day, waiting for when they have to fight with the wolf, Ragnarok. And it's not enough. They still lose. Odin still dies, right? So, but there's enough pork and mead for those 432,000 Einherjar. So interesting. All right, one more thing to look at. Okay, this is from Havamal, stanza 138 and 139. Probably it's top three most famous quotes in Norse mythology. So let me read it. I ween that I hung on the windy tree, hung there for nights, full 9. With the spear I was wounded, and offered I was to Odin, myself to myself, on that tree that none may ever know what root beneath it runs. None made me happy with leaf or horn, and there below I looked. I took up the runes, shrieking, I took them, and forthwith back I fell. So this obviously is related to Odin hanging from the tree of Yggdrasil. He hung himself and he pierced himself with Gungnir, his spear, and he hung there for 9 days without food, without drink, and he had some kind of, like, he looked down and he saw the runes. So there's maybe some type of transformation through the sacrifice and through the suffering. Perhaps it may even be metaphorically he died. Maybe because when he fell, maybe that means he died. And came back or something. But through the sacrifice, through the dying or through the pain, it's not entirely clear. But he took up the runes and he learned the runes. Now the Havamal will continue talking about 18, I think, 18 different magic runes, knowledge that Odin learned. So this is how he learned the magic of the runes, through his self-sacrifice. He, to Odin, myself to myself. The Norse is right there. I really have this really hard. Swalfamir, I think. Swalfam? Yeah, it's hard to say. Myself to myself. He sacrificed himself to himself. So again, this is more related to Odin as a god of knowledge. But again, sacrificing yourself, like killing yourself on a tree, that does appear to be connected to the god of death, from my understanding. But I'll talk about this a lot more when we look at Odin as the god of knowledge. All right, so let me kind of recap a little bit. So some of the key points here. Odin is frequently referenced as Volfather, the father of the slain. He uses necromancy to interrogate, question dead witches, although I don't like that word. Cirruses, vulva. He raises them up from death and asks them questions to gain knowledge. So again, the crossover between knowledge and death. And of course, probably the strongest indication of Odin as the god of death are the Valkyries choosing the dead slain, and the Einherjar themselves, his dead warriors, his champions in Valhalla, training for the final battle at Ragnarok. That's about all I have to say about Odin as the god of death. I will make another video. I'll make two more videos on this. One about Odin as the god of knowledge, which I already touched on quite a lot in this video, and Odin as the god of poetry, which I did not talk about at all. But that's going to be, of course, connected to the mead, the mead of poetry, quite specifically. And there's a big long story about that. So I'll get into that in another video. So thank you for watching. I hope this was educational and you learned something new. Please, if you disagree with any of my interpretations, any ideas, please let me know in the comments, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.